A single photo. That was all it took. After a long day of work and an intense session at the gym, he was lying in bed scrolling through old photos on his phone when he came across a picture he hadn't seen in years. It was a simple picture of him and her smiling together, standing side by side during happier times. Most people would swipe past a memory like that, but something about that photo made him stop. He stared at it for a while, and suddenly a thought entered his mind, a thought that had never fully formed before. What if it was all a setup? Not from the beginning, not from the first conversation, but somewhere along the way. Somewhere between the promises, the plans, the trips, the arguments, and the delays. What if the story he thought he was living wasn't actually the story that was happening behind the scenes? Years earlier, it had all started in the most ordinary way possible. One night, he was mindlessly scrolling through social media after work. Video after video, profile after profile, nothing particularly interesting until he came across her account. There was something about her that caught his attention. Maybe it was her smile, maybe it was the way she carried herself, maybe it was simply perfect timing. Whatever it was, he found himself staring at her profile longer than usual. Eventually, he sent a friend request. He didn't think much of it. Most friend requests lead nowhere. But this one was different. She accepted. A conversation started. One message became 10. 10 messages became 100. Soon they were talking every single day. Morning messages turned into late-night phone calls. They shared stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, their goals. There was laughter, teasing, inside jokes, and a connection that felt almost effortless. It was the kind of chemistry people spend years searching for. For the first time in a very long time, he felt understood. Every notification from her made him smile. Every call felt too short. Every conversation left him wanting more. Slowly but surely, she became part of his daily routine. Months passed, and what started as a simple online connection transformed into a serious relationship. He wasn't the type of person who fell in love easily, but with her it felt natural. He introduced her to his friends through video calls. His family knew about her. Most importantly, his mother knew about her. His mother listened to the stories, watched the calls, and grew fond of her. In fact, his mother liked her so much that she often encouraged him to take the relationship seriously. For the first time, he began imagining a future that wasn't just a fantasy. He imagined marriage. He imagined a family. He imagined building a life together. The distance between them felt like an obstacle, but not an impossible one. He was willing to do whatever it took to close that gap. Eventually, he decided it was time to meet in person. Not only her, but her family as well. He spent money arranging everything. He handled travel expenses. He planned a trip. He sponsored her and even arranged for his own mother to travel so everyone could finally meet face to face. Malaysia became the meeting point. It was supposed to be a vacation, but for him it felt much bigger than that. It felt like the first chapter of their future together. The trip was amazing. They explored new places, took photos, shared meals, laughed together, and created memories that felt straight out of a movie. Watching his mother interact with her gave him confidence. Seeing everyone get along made him believe he had made the right choice. At one point during the trip, he looked around and thought to himself, this is it. This is the woman I'm going to marry. Yet looking back, there were signs. Small signs. The kind of signs that don't seem important when you're deeply in love. Every time he brought up marriage, something strange happened. The topic never became an argument, but it never became a serious discussion either. The conversation would drift somewhere else. There would be a distraction, a change of subject, a reason to postpone the discussion. At the time, he didn't think much of it. After all, people move at different speeds. Marriage is a huge decision. Maybe she needed more time. Maybe she wanted things to happen naturally. He convinced himself there was nothing unusual about it. Love has a way of turning warning signs into harmless details. Time passed and eventually another opportunity arrived. This time he traveled with a clear goal in mind. He wasn't traveling just to visit anymore. He was traveling to take the next step. His mother came with him because everyone believed a wedding could finally happen. There was excitement. There was hope. There was anticipation. Yet something felt different this time. The arguments had increased. What used to be occasional disagreements were now happening regularly. Small issues became major conflicts. A misunderstood message could ruin an entire day. A simple disagreement could turn into hours of tension. Even when they weren't physically together, arguments happened over calls and messages. Still, he pushed forward. He believed this was normal. Every relationship has challenges. Every couple fights. Love isn't perfect. Those were the things he told himself whenever doubt tried to enter his mind. The closer they got to marriage, the stranger things became. Court dates were discussed but never finalized. Documents were mentioned but never completed. Plans were made but somehow always postponed. Every time a solution appeared, a new obstacle emerged. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Excuses piled up. Delays piled up. Frustration piled up. Yet despite everything, he continued believing they would eventually get married. After investing so much emotionally, financially, and mentally, he couldn't imagine walking away. He kept telling himself that all relationships face hurdles before reaching the finish line. As the date of his return approached, reality became impossible to ignore. The marriage hadn't happened. Despite all the conversations, all the planning, all the sacrifices, nothing had actually moved forward. He boarded his flight home carrying more questions than answers. He was confused, disappointed, but still hopeful. Deep down, he believed they would figure things out eventually. Instead, things got worse. Once he returned home, the relationship entered its darkest phase. Arguments became almost daily occurrences. Every conversation felt like stepping into a minefield. The happiness that once defined the relationship seemed completely gone. He began noticing patterns he had ignored before. So many discussions revolved around money. So many requests involved financial support. So many expectations seemed one-sided. Whenever he was in love, he gave without hesitation. He never kept score. He never calculated what he spent because he believed he was investing in a future together. But now he started wondering whether he was the only one investing. The relationship began feeling less like a partnership and more like an obligation. Eventually, both of them reached a breaking point. The arguments had become exhausting. The connection that once felt magical now felt toxic. Neither person seemed happy anymore. The decision to end things wasn't dramatic. There wasn't one huge fight. There wasn't one final betrayal. There was simply exhaustion. They had reached the point where staying together hurt more than letting go. And when the breakup finally happened, he expected to feel devastated. Instead, he felt something surprising: relief. For the first time in months, there was peace. No arguments. No emotional roller coaster. No constant stress. Just silence. And strangely, the silence felt good. Life slowly returned to normal. He focused on work. He focused on his studies. He focused on the gym. Every day he became stronger physically and mentally. The relationship gradually became a memory rather than a wound. Then one day he heard shocking news. She was engaged, only a few months after their breakup. He didn't know how to feel. Part of him was surprised. Part of him was hurt. But another part of him was genuinely happy for her. She deserved happiness just like anyone else. So he accepted it and continued moving forward. Some time later, he heard she was married. Again, there was a strange mix of emotions. He questioned himself. Was he not good enough? Was he the problem? Why could she commit to someone else so quickly when she seemed unable to commit to him? Those questions lingered, but life moved on. Years passed. Then came that photo. The photo that reopened a door he thought had been permanently closed. As he stared at the image, his mind began connecting dots that he had never connected before. What if she had met someone else before the relationship ended? What if her feelings changed long before she admitted it? What if her family knew? What if the delays weren't accidents? What if the increasing arguments weren't random? What if every obstacle that appeared was actually intentional? What if the reason marriage never happened was because nobody truly wanted it to happen except him? What if the engagement that happened shortly after their breakup wasn't sudden at all? What if that relationship had been developing behind the scenes while he was still fighting to save theirs? The more he thought about it, the more questions emerged. Maybe the signs were there all along. Maybe he ignored them because he was in love. Maybe everyone around him could see what he couldn't. Maybe the relationship had quietly ended long before the official breakup. Maybe the arguments weren't the cause of the ending. Maybe they were symptoms of something already dead. But then another possibility entered his mind. A possibility that was harder to accept because it offered no villain and no conspiracy. What if none of it was a setup? What if two people genuinely loved each other at one point, but gradually became incompatible? What if feelings changed naturally? What if life simply pulled them in different directions? What if nobody was manipulating anyone? What if nobody was secretly planning anything? What if the relationship failed for the same reason millions of relationships fail every year? Because love alone isn't always enough. And that was the answer he could never find. Not because he wasn't intelligent enough. Not because he didn't think hard enough. But because some questions simply don't have answers. He would never know what happened inside her mind. He would never know what conversations happened behind closed doors. He would never know whether the delays, the excuses, and the arguments were intentional or accidental. The truth was buried somewhere in the past, inaccessible forever. Eventually, he looked away from the photo and locked his phone. He realized something important. Whether it was a setup or not no longer mattered. The relationship was over. The years were gone. The lessons remained. He had survived the heartbreak. He had survived the confusion. He had survived the disappointment. And despite everything, he was still standing, stronger, wiser, more aware than before. Maybe that was the real ending to the story. Not discovering the truth about her, but discovering peace within himself. Because sometimes the most important question isn't whether someone betrayed you. The most important question is whether you're willing to let the past keep controlling your future. And for the first time in years, he finally had his answer. He stood up, put the phone down, and continued living his life. Some memories stay with us forever. Some questions never get answered. But life moves forward anyway. And sometimes that's enough.